On December of 1969, the 10th entry in the Godzilla franchise, titled Gojira, Minilla, Gabara, Uru Kaiju Dai Shengeki, translated as Godzilla, Minilla, Gabara, All Monsters Attack, was released in Japan by Toho, while in the West, United Productions of America acquired the rights to the film for release in the US, with Marin Films distributing the movie in 1971. Released on a double bill with the Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing movie, Island of the Burning Damned. Interestingly, the movie's initial American title was Minilla, Son of Godzilla. The title was later changed to the more questionable but distinguishable title of Godzilla's Revenge, though the Minilla title did manage to get a few screenings in the East Coast in 1972. The other working titles suggested for the American release were Terror of Godzilla, which would later be used for Terror of Mechagodzilla's theatrical run in the US. Another title was Godzilla's Leverage. Yeah. Anyway, with all that said, let's dive in. Of course, we start with the title sequences. Both versions use different opening logos, as well as unique titles for themselves. The Japanese version has a song playing over its intro, titled Monster March, performed by Lily Sasaki, being heard over various clips from the prior 3 Godzilla films before this one, with new footage sprinkled throughout it. You can also hear the roars of the various kaiju as they appear on screen. The American version does use the same intro, only the monster cries are absent, and the quirky song has been dropped altogether, and replaced with a new piece of music titled Crime Fiction, constructed by Irvin Jareb. Aside from that, and of course the logos and title cards, all the footage is pretty much one for one. When the red car goes by and the main character Ichiro compares it to the noise of Minilla, or Minya for the dub, the kaiju's roar is actually heard in the American version, to give better contrast to what Ichiro is saying. During the montage of the city, the song Monster March plays again in the Japanese version, while it's replaced with Crime Fiction in the US one. When we see Ichiro's father, we find out that his name is Tak in the dub, while in the original, his name is Kinkichi Miki. Where Tak comes from that, I don't know. Also, the scene where the father is chatting with a co-worker, both of them deliberately bring up the problems with the air pollution, which was a big deal at the time in Japan, while any mention of that is gone from the dub. The tubes that Ichiro finds on the ground are vacuum tubes in the Japanese version, while the dub has them as radio tubes, though a later scene would call them vacuum tubes again. We later find out that the kaiju Gabara gets his name from Ichiro's bully, who is also called Gabara. However, in the Japanese version, we find out that his name is Sanko, which is never mentioned in the dub. Speaking of names, let's look at some kaiju name changes. I've already mentioned Minilla was changed to Minya, but there are a few other oddball names as well, like Kamacuras being Kamakura, Gorosaurus being Esbrosaurus, Anguirus is Anguillus. There's another odd dialogue change in both versions, when Ichiro reunites with Minilla. The dub has Ichiro saying that he wants Minilla to introduce him to his father Godzilla, while in the Japanese version, Ichiro asks if the two can climb on Godzilla's back, which, try to imagine that. Also, if you've never seen this movie before, Godzilla's son Minilla can talk. He's voiced by Midori Uchiyama, who played one of the Keylocks in Destroy All Monsters, though some sources say it's a voice actress instead, named Michiko Hirai. Regardless on that, Minilla is voiced by a woman in the Japanese version, while the English one has him voiced by a man, doing this Barney the Dinosaur-like voice before Barney was even a thing.
Godzilla says that I should learn to fight my own battles, you know.
Also, there are some parts where Minilla gets additional dialogue in the English dub, speaking in moments where he says nothing in the Japanese version.
Boy, that Gabara's stronger than the one I know.
Yeah, this one's kind of strong.
The Japanese version also has Minilla mentioning that Godzilla couldn't use his atomic breath at first either, and that he had to practice to use it, something the dub glosses over. When the fighter jets come to attack Godzilla, Minilla mentions that it's another attempt by the humans trying to invade Monster Island, while the dub makes no mention of this. There is a bit of dialogue heard in the Japanese version that has Ichiro being silent in the dub, that being the moment where he's trying to cover the hole for one of the robbers to fall in on. During the part where Ichiro honks the horn on the painter's bike, the sound of the horn is different in both versions. When the dad confronts the painter who is running after Ichiro, we can actually hear what they're talking about in the Japanese version, whereas in the US version, it's hard to make out what they're saying. And finally, the end title cards are different in both cuts. Overall, Godzilla's Revenge has little to no changes done to it. Aside from some sound effect and dialogue differences, the movie is pretty much intact from its Japanese version. So whatever version you plan on watching, you're getting the whole Monster Island experience with this one. Thank you for watching towards the end, and I'll see you next time.
C. Cataclysmic confrontations. Experience true adventure in Godzilla's Revenge.